Welcome, everyone. Today, we're opening up the files on something that, well, secretly runs the show for a lot of people. Perfectionism. We're aiming to carve out a path towards what some researchers call a free life, basically. A life less burdened by that constant, exhausting need for everything to be flawless. So our mission for this deep dive, cut through the clutter. We want to extract the real essentials on what perfectionism is, how it sneakily disguises itself as, say, ambition, and crucially, the practical things, the actual steps you can take starting today to embrace imperfection, to get back some real confidence and joy.
Exactly. And we really have to start with the definition because that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, I think. Perfectionism often looks like discipline or maybe just having high standards, and those can be healthy things. But what the sources consistently show is that the fundamental root of perfectionism is actually fear. Specifically, it's fear of failure, definitely fear of judgment from others, and maybe the most damaging one, that deep, nagging internal fear of just not being good enough. It's not really about trying to do your best work. It's more this chronic, stress-fueled belief that whatever your best is right now, it's never, ever adequate. That's the pressure trap we're talking about.
And that tiny shift in belief,
Yeah.
right? That the outcome somehow defines you as a person. The research really highlights that as the core lie perfectionism feeds us. So we're going to unpack exactly how this relentless pressure weaves its way into daily choices, how it leads to burnout, sometimes just total indecision. And then importantly, we'll get into the concrete strategies for turning that cycle around. Let's maybe start by really defining the shape of this trap.
Okay. So at its heart, perfectionism is this relentless, really pressure-driven chase for flawlessness. And the critical thing to understand is that this chase creates chronic anxiety, chronic stress, and it does this no matter how much you actually achieve. That inner critic is always there, making sure the tension never really lets up. It's always whispering, could have done that better, or careful, they're definitely judging you.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, something we saw across different sources, is what they call the paradox of perfectionism. Logically, you'd think wanting something to be perfect means you'll achieve great things, right? But ironically, that intense desire for flawlessness, it often leads straight to paralysis, procrastination, even self-sabotage. Think about that common example, the writer just staring at a blank page. It's not usually a lack of talent. It's waiting for the absolutely perfect, unassailable opening sentence. Or the flawless first draft. That fear, the fear of the inevitable imperfection in that first try, it just makes starting feel impossible. Or maybe the colleague who keeps delaying submitting a really strong project because they're stuck in endless revision mode, totally convinced it's not quite flawless yet.
Exactly. Perfectionism creates this horrible cycle where the fear of messing up increases your stress, which then makes it even harder to take action, and bam, you're stuck, trapped in indecision. And escaping is tough because, well, this trap looks different for different people. The research points to three main types of perfectionism. Recognizing your particular flavor, let's say, is really the crucial first step to tackling it. So the first type is the one we probably think of most often, self-oriented perfectionism. This is where you impose these incredibly high, rigid standards on yourself. You are absolutely your own harshest critic. If you're constantly agonizing over tiny details nobody else even sees, or beating yourself up over minor slip-ups, or feeling like a failure even when you actually succeed, this is likely your mode. It's all internal.
Okay, that makes sense. Then there's socially prescribed perfectionism. This one seems rooted more in assumptions about the outside world. It's the belief that other people expect or demand you to be perfect.
That's right. If this is what drives you, you're often, maybe subconsciously, scanning the environment, looking for approval, absolutely dreading judgment. You might structure your whole behavior just to avoid even the hint of criticism.
So a quick way to spot that might be avoiding challenges. Just because you're worried about how people will see you if you, stumble.
Precisely. The fear of perception becomes the main driver. And then finally, there's other-oriented perfectionism. Here, the pressure gets turned outwards onto the people around you. You hold others, maybe colleagues, friends, family, to the same impossible standards you might hold for yourself.
Ah, okay. And that inevitably leads to frustration. All right. Disappointment. Because people are, human.
Exactly. It strains relationships because others will inevitably fail to meet those sky-high benchmarks.
So when do these tendencies get sort of amplified? The sources mentioned specific triggers, didn't they?
They did. Comparison is a huge one, especially with, the curated highlight reels we see on social media. That constant comparison really intensifies things.
I can see that.
Also, high-stakes situations, like a big presentation, a job interview, a performance review. These can crank up the volume on that inner critic.
Leading right back to that avoidance and paralysis we talked about.
Yeah.
It all connects.
Okay. So understanding the trap, its shapes, its triggers, that's step one. But as you said, just being aware isn't quite enough to break free, is it? To genuinely move towards that free life, we need an active mindset shift. We need to consciously replace that root fear with something else. Self-compassion, flexibility. That's the core of it. That mindset shift starts with almost like active cognitive combat. You have to learn to catch and then challenge those automatic perfectionist thoughts. You know, the ones, those whispers that sound so convincing. If it's not perfect, I've completely failed. Or that tendency to catastrophize, one mistake is going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
The first step is just noticing when these pop up. Then you have to immediately challenge them. Ask yourself honestly, is this expectation actually realistic? Or maybe a kinder approach? Would I hold a friend or someone I care about to this exact same impossible standard? Just questioning that inner critic starts to create some distance. You begin to separate the reality of the situation from the exaggerated fears perfectionism cooks up.
Okay, but I want to pause here for a second because I think this is where people get stuck. If the big shift is replacing I must be perfect with I am enough, how do you deal with the guilt or the fear that follows? Like, the immediate thought is often, okay, if I relax my standards, won't I just become lazy or mediocre? Is there a clear difference between healthy high standards just striving for excellence and that destructive perfectionism?
That is such an essential distinction. And yes, there is a difference. It lies in the source of your motivation and your reaction when things don't go perfectly. Healthy high standards. They're usually motivated by genuine interest, a desire for growth, for mastery. You focus on the process, the learning, and when you stumble or fail, yeah, you feel disappointed, maybe frustrated, but you tend to move fairly quickly towards figuring out what went wrong, towards problem solving. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is almost always motivated by the avoidance of shame. The focus is laser-like on the outcome because you believe that outcome defines your entire self-worth. So when you inevitably fall short, the reaction isn't just disappointment. It's often intense self-criticism, maybe paralysis, even a full-blown identity crisis. So choosing I am enough doesn't mean ditching effort or settling for subpar work. It means cutting that toxic emotional link between a flawed result and your fundamental value as a person.
That distinction really clarifies why adopting a growth mindset is so vital for this whole rewiring process. Because perfectionists often operate from that fixed mindset, right? Where a mistake feels like proof of some permanent flaw in their ability or character.
Absolutely. The growth mindset completely flips that script. It reframes mistakes entirely. They're not signs of inadequacy. They're essential data points. They're learning experiences. It celebrates the effort you put in, the progress you make, rather than demanding only flawless results. Think about, say, getting feedback at work. Someone with a fixed mindset perfectionism hears one piece of constructive criticism and might just fixate on it. They feel personally attacked, maybe think the whole review was a disaster. The mistake confirms their fear. See, I failed.
Right.
But someone operating with a growth mindset, ideally fueled by some self-compassion, sees that criticism as valuable feedback. They ask, okay, what can I learn here? And they focus their energy on applying that lesson to improve next time. It's a fundamental shift from self-blame towards constructive problem solving.
And that self-compassion piece seems critical. It's like the lubricant for the growth mindset engine.
That's a great way to put it. It means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a friend who messed up. It builds resilience. So when you stumble, the compassionate inner voice says something like, okay, that didn't quite work out. How can we support ourselves to move forward? Instead of that harsh, critical voice yelling, you idiot, you failed again.
Okay, that makes sense. We've laid out the psychological groundwork, the mindset shifts needed. Now let's get into the engine of actual change.
Yeah.
The practical stuff. Because true freedom, like you said, is found in those small daily choices where you actively pick imperfection over paralysis. So, if the mindset is the engine, what are the daily habits we need to fuel it?
Right. This is where we move from just thinking about it to actually doing things differently. The sources highlight 4 really actionable strategies for building habits that reinforce this freedom. First up, mindfulness and acceptance. Perfectionism thrives on keeping your mind trapped, worrying about past mistakes or dreading future failures. Mindfulness pulls you back to the present moment.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
2 simple exercises are really helpful. First, a basic breathing practice. When you notice those perfectionist thoughts bubbling up the shoulds, the musts, just acknowledge them, maybe label them thinking, and gently return your focus to your breath, no judgment. Second, try a daily check-in. At the end of your day, just pause for a minute and ask yourself, what did I do today that actually mattered, regardless of whether it was perfect? This helps shift your focus from external flawlessness to internal values and effort.
I like that. Okay, strategy 2. Consciously celebrate effort over outcome. Because perfectionists are masters at spotting the flaws, right? While totally ignoring the huge amount of effort they might have put in. So you have to actively retrain your brain to value the process.
Precisely. And a great tool for this is keeping a gratitude journal, but frame it specifically around effort. Each day, jot down maybe 3 things you put effort into. Really acknowledge the time, the energy, the focus you invested.
So it could be small things, like
Okay.
showing up prepared for a meeting, or just starting that task you were dreading.
Absolutely. That becomes the measure of worth, not whether the outcome was 100% flawless.
Got it. What's the third strategy?
Third, using creative expression as a safe space for intentional messiness. Engage in some low-stakes creative activity, maybe painting, playing an instrument you're not great at, even cooking something new without strictly following the recipe.
The goal isn't mastery then.
Not at all. The key is to practice experimentation, to allow for imperfection, like maybe intentionally swap an ingredient while cooking just to see what happens. Or if you journal, try writing really fast and messy. It creates a safe zone to embrace what some call happy accidents. It helps you internalize that letting go of rigid control can actually boost creativity and, ultimately, your sense of freedom.
Makes sense. Creating space for things to be not perfect. And the fourth strategy.
The fourth focuses on building the habit of actively choosing good enough. This is really your anti-procrastination weapon. You need practical habits like setting strict time limits on tasks. This stops the endless tweaking.
So give yourself, say, 45 minutes to draft that email, and when the timer dings.
You send it, even if you immediately see 3 ways you could have phrased something better. Done is better than perfect, but never finished. And you need to reinforce this by consciously practicing saying good enough out loud or to yourself, and then finishing tasks without trying to polish every single detail.
So, submitting the strong but not perfect draft. Hanging the picture even if it's slightly crooked. Leaving one dish in the sink overnight.
Exactly. These small conscious acts of completion over perfection are how you gradually rewire your brain. You change your definition of done, and that freedom starts to feel more natural.
Okay, this is all really practical. But we know letting go isn't like flipping a switch, right? It's definitely a journey, not a destination. So how do we keep this up? How do we prevent those old, ingrained perfectionist patterns from creeping back in, especially when life inevitably gets stressful?
Yeah, maintenance is key, and it requires ongoing intentional habits. The first crucial one is reflection. Use journaling daily or weekly, not just to vent, but specifically to track your growth in this area. Make a point to highlight moments where you did choose good enough over chasing flawlessness, and then note the result. Was the relief, the sense of completion, actually worth the slightly less than perfect outcome? Usually the answer is yes. This reinforces the new pathway in your brain.
So actively noticing the benefits of letting go.
Exactly. Second, pay really close attention to your supportive environment. You need to consciously surround yourself with people who are generally non-judgmental, people who encourage your efforts and accept you, flaws and all. And crucially, this also means being quite ruthless about limiting exposure to environments that trigger comparison or criticism.
Which might mean curating your social media feed.
Absolutely. Critically evaluate, maybe mute or unfollow, accounts that consistently make you feel inadequate or pressure you towards impossible standards. Protect your mental space.
Okay, environment matters. What about when we inevitably mess up? Because setbacks will happen.
They will. And that's where learning to handle setbacks with grace comes in. Remember, your reaction to the mistake often matters more than the mistake itself. So instead of that instant self-attack, the goal is to pause, take that deep breath we talked about, and consciously try to reframe the situation. Shift your focus away from self-blame or blaming others and towards recovery and problem solving. Okay, this happened. What's the next step?
That sounds like it builds resilience over time. Teaches your system that mistakes aren't catastrophes.
Precisely. They become survivable, learnable moments, not identity-defining crises.
So zooming out, what does all this mean for the bigger picture? The sources seem to suggest the ultimate goal isn't just, say, better productivity, but building a more sustainable life overall.
That's right. A life where you intentionally integrate rest and play just as much as you value effort and achievement. It's about aligning what you do with what genuinely matters to you, not just focusing on what looks perfect or impressive to the outside world.
Okay.
So the synthesis here seems pretty clear. By consistently focusing on your progress, not just the end result, by actively choosing self-compassion when you stumble, and by building those supportive daily habits like the check-ins, the time limits, celebrating effort, you genuinely start to reshape your mindset. And that inevitably changes the trajectory of your life.
It's a powerful message, really, and surprisingly simple at its core. You absolutely do not have to be perfect to live a full and meaningful life. Your worth isn't measured by flawless outcomes. It's measured by who you are, the effort you bring, the way you show up day after day.
Which brings us to one final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. If perfectionism is, at its heart, this deep fear of being seen as not enough, what is one small, maybe slightly visible risk you could take, even today? Maybe it's sharing that imperfect first draft. Maybe it's starting that messy creative project you've been putting off. Maybe it's just consciously pausing to rest when you feel pressured to push through. What's one small action that demonstrates, mainly to yourself, but maybe also to the world, that your authentic self, right here, right now, is enough? Because your journey towards living more freely, it really begins with that single conscious choice.